Hi everyone, it's Scott here on the Movie Reviewers 100 collaboration movie review channel. I hope you had a great Christmas. That was yesterday. And we're doing a Christmas theme this week, so I'm sort of concluding it here, even though Christmas is already over with. I wanted to talk about a film which I feel is like the definitive Christmas film. It was directed by George Seaton, who I think passed away in 1979, and his most notable film, looking at his filmography here on IMDb, aside from the one I'm going to talk about, is Airport, the 1970 disaster film. Miracle on 34th Street, of course, is a movie that came out in 1947, and in addition to starring a very, very young Natalie Wood, also featured amongst the cast. Excuse me, let me back up here to the page with the cast on it. Maureen O'Hara as Doris Walker, who works for a department store in New York City. Her gentleman friend, Fred Gailey, is played by John Payne. And of course, Edmund Gwenn as an elderly gentleman who she recruits at the last minute to appear as Santa Claus in the parade on their department store float. The one that they had hired got a little tipsy, a little bit too much whiskey, so they pull him off the float and they put Edmund Wood, this elderly man played by Edmund Gwenn, on the float. And he's so good at what he does that they say, hey, you know, you're terrific as Santa Claus. How about you come and sit in the department store and greet all the kids and who want to sit on Santa's lap and get their picture taken? And he's like, well, of course, I'd be delighted to. But he claims that his name is actually Kris Kringle, Kris with a K, Kringle with a K. And then he actually is Santa Claus. I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, it's very nice that you can do this whole character and everything like that. I appreciate your commitment to the character. But really, what's your real name? He says, no, my name is Kris Kringle. I really am Santa Claus. And of course, everyone thinks that he's crazy and he doesn't know what he's talking about. And some people think, well, you know, I mean, he just thinks he's Santa Claus. I mean, what's the harm in that? What's the harm in him? You know, and other people are like, no, he's mentally incompetent, blah, blah, blah. And they actually, and so the character Fred Gailey, he's an attorney, so he decides to represent Kris in court when he's, when there's a hearing to decide whether or not he's mentally incompetent or not. Meanwhile, Maureen O'Hara's character, Doris Walker, her daughter Susan, she's taught her over the years that Santa Claus isn't real, that he's just a myth, something that parents tell their kids. This magical person comes along and gives you presents on Christmas, but it isn't actually true. And, you know, Susan, hearing this from her mother, you know, believes it very much. It makes sense. But then she's confronted with this man who says that he actually is Santa Claus. And at one point she says to him, well, if you really are Santa Claus, then maybe you can get me something that an ordinary person couldn't for Christmas. He's like, well, what would you like? He says, I want a house for my mother and I. We live in this apartment in New York City, but I'd really, really like a house. And he says, well, I don't know if I can do that. I mean, you know, little kids always ask for things that they don't actually need, you know, like submarines and fighter planes and things like that. And little Susan goes, well, you know, we actually really could use a house. It would be very nice to have a house. What do you say? And he says, well, I'll give it a shot. I guess we'll find out on Christmas. So while that's going on, while she's sort of, you know, pragmatically waiting to see whether or not this guy can deliver a house to her, the hearing goes on, and the lawyer does some fancy footwork involving the post office to prove that Santa Claus is actually a real person, and not only that the case, but this gentleman who claims to be called Kris Kringle actually is Santa Claus. The real great part of the movie for me is what happens at the very end of the film. In the last scenes, it's Christmas Day, and Susan basically doesn't, you know, obviously have her house, you know, sitting under the tree. And she says, well, I thought there'd be a note or something or whatever, but obviously, you know, this guy over here claiming to be Santa Claus isn't the real deal because he didn't get me a house. And her mother, against her better judgment, says having faith in something means believing in something when common sense tells you not to. And she's like, you know, yeah, okay, whatever, you know. And what happens next is they're supposed to go somewhere after the party, and Kris Kringle gives them directions how to get there, saying that there's a shortcut. So on the drive there, little Susan is sitting in the backseat of the car, saying to herself, okay, I believe. It's silly, but I believe. And at some point along the road, she looks out the window and actually sees the house. And I like to think that at one point in her head, she's saying to herself, well, if Santa Claus really was a real person, then this guy I met probably could be him. Or something flips in her mind. At one point, she decides that maybe she will believe that this guy is Santa Claus. And it's at that moment that she sees on the street this house that she wanted. She demands that her mother stop the car. She jumps out. She goes inside the house. Turns out there's a for sale sign on the lawn. She goes upstairs. She checks out her room. It's exactly the way she imagined it. She looks outside that there's a tire swing. And her mother and Fred, the lawyer, are saying, well, I think we better look into buying this house. We don't want to disappoint her. And then they notice that there's a cane that Kris Kringle used throughout the film, leaning next to the fireplace or against a wall, something like that. And as Christmas movies goes, is especially appropriate because Christmas, of course, is all about Jesus and having faith in something that seems fantastical. But if you do believe, despite your common sense, then you'll be rewarded, obviously, and that's exactly what happens to Susan in this movie. Despite her, common sense, her sense that this isn't really real, she decides to believe it anyway, and at that point, she gets what she wants. She gets her reward, the house. So it's a nice little metaphor, and it's a good movie as well. It's a fun movie. Obviously, it was made a while ago, so the acting and the cinema style is very old-fashioned. It's black and white, of course. Yeah, I always thought it was the perfect Christmas movie. So there's your review, and we are going to take a week off. We will be back in the new year with a tribute week to Peter O'Toole, an actor who passed away recently. Another tribute. So please tune in for that. We hope you enjoy New Year's. Have a good New Year, and hope you had a great Christmas. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.